Hello, and welcome to my first EU novel review. This video is on Crucible, the 2013 novel by Troy Denning. I'm starting at the end here. Crucible is not the exact last piece of media in the Legends timeline. That would be the two sets of legacy comics. However, it is the last time that we're going to see Luke, Leia, Han, and pretty much all the other characters who show up in this novel alive. However, Crucible wasn't really intended to be the end. When it was being written, there were still plans to publish a Sword of the Jedi trilogy that would have focused on Jaina, and presumably other works in the EU. More than an ending, Crucible was intended to be a transition, moving from Luke, Han, and Leia being the main characters to their children and the next generation being at the forefront. They deal with this transition in a pretty ham-fisted way at the very end. There's a scene in a cantina where pretty much all the main characters are together at a table and Luke, Han, and Leia jointly announce their semi-retirement. Because of this, I'll be focusing most of this video on why Crucible is an effective transition novel. Towards the end, we'll talk a little bit about how it also functions as an ending to the series. This may seem very obvious, but a good transition needs to know what chapter it's ending. Yes, the goal of the novel is to retire Han, Luke, and Leia, but it's not immediately clear what era of Han, Luke, and Leia we're trying to end off. Are we trying to end Fate of the Jedi, this post New Jedi Order world? The answer is both, but really, they're trying to top off their entire careers. Crucible constantly reminds us of this. Big Three have been places in their lives, and they bear the scars from it. Luke reminds us near the end of the novel that he's been the head of the Jedi Order for 40 years, and at the beginning, he's still struggling with the after effects of the wounds he sustained in his final duel with Abeloth. What I felt was probably the best scene in the book. Han plays Sabak with the Crefts, the main villains. And as one of their bets, one of them asks him why he was more devastated by Chewbacca's death than that of his son Anakin. And as a follow-up, why he was more pained by Anakin's death than Jason's. In story, this is meant to throw Han off. It also reminds the readers of the emotional scars that both Han and Leia have sustained over the past 40 years. It also marries the flavors of the two eras of post-Return of the Jedi EU publishing. There are exceptions, of course, but the Del Rey era of Star Wars publishing was characterized by these long, sweeping series, starting with New Jedi Order, which is, I believe, 19 books, then Legacy of the Force and Fate of the Jedi, both of which are 9 books long. Crucible is, in some ways, a standalone. However, it builds on events from Fate of the Jedi. We catch up with Vistara, and our characters find what may or may not be the Mortis monolith. But with the Crefts, Crucible maintains some of that Warlord of the Week Valentine era feel. They have a plan to take over the galaxy, beef with Han Solo, and are dead by the end of the book. What could possibly be more Valentine than that? The younger characters also remind us of this transition, particularly Omid Kaig. Multiple characters remark on his similarities to a young Han Solo. Emphasis on the young. This generational transition is pulled off more subtly with Murta Gev. She plays the same basic function that Boba Fett often does in the EU. She's the bad guy's hired gun. However, you couldn't stick Fett in her role. It just wouldn't make sense for him as a character. Murta's younger, and she's less experienced. You couldn't put Boba Fett in an evening dress and have him play Sabak dealer. That just wouldn't happen. Similarly, he wouldn't take the deal with the Crefts that Murda does. Yes, you can see a situation where Fett would provide the Mandos, the Crefts would provide an antidote, but that's where Murda's inexperience shows. She knows that she's not actually going to get that antidote out of the Crefts. She knows they've betrayed her. However, she never calls them on it. She's still hoping against hope that they're still working on it, that she will get an antidote out of this. That's where she differs from Fett. Fett's older, he's more experienced, and he's not as naive. Jaina doesn't appear much in this book, and for it to function as a transition, she really doesn't need to. Jaina's been made a Jedi Master by the end of Fate of the Jedi. She's married to Jag, and we see her on the path that's going to take her to both create the Fel Dynasty and likely the Imperial Knights. We don't know exactly how those events occur. My assumption is that that would have been explained more in the Sword of the Jedi trilogy. However, we can see where she's headed. Her cousin does need this transition. Crucible is the first time we see an adult Ben Skywalker. By my math, he's 18 or 19 in this book, though Denning puts out a throwaway line that he's just a little bit younger than Luke was when he went to train with Yoda. So maybe I'm off and he's in his early 20s. Ben's a Jedi by the end of Legacy of the Force. However, he really spends much of Fate of the Jedi acting as Luke's apprentice. Crucible, we see him actually coming into his own as a Jedi Knight. He's been working somewhat independently. Tahiri's his mission partner, and they do actually seem to be equals. Ben also displays some skills that we've never seen from him before. He did navigate the Maw in Fate of the Jedi. However, we've never really seen him be like a fighter pilot like he is in Crucible. Even Lander remarks that he's never seen flying like that, and that's pretty high praise. Ben's definitely not the Jedi leader that I assume he was intended to become over the course of subsequent novels. However, we can start to see that man emerging. Off-page, Vistara has come into her own as a Sith Lord. She's not worrying anymore about killing a Jedi to save Ben. Now she's killing 40,000 people in an act of corporate sabotage for a company that she's hoping to take over. Vistara is smart, seductive, and seems poised to do some serious damage to our heroes. But she still has her weaknesses. She's still very afraid of Luke Skywalker, and rightly so. But though I doubt she would have described her relationships with the Crefts as trusting, they still are able to create the clone Savara 2 behind her back. She didn't see that deception coming, and it shows that she still has her weaknesses. She still has a way to grow before she can become the real threat that I think Denning was trying to set her up as for future works. I would not put money on them ever picking up Legends where they left off, but if they do, Vistara's storyline is one that I'm very interested to see. I'm intrigued as to what ends up happening to her. Does she come back to the light side? Right now, it doesn't seem like she has any doubts, and I'm not sure how you can come back from some of the acts that she's committed. However, she's also been set up as Ben's foil and potential love interest, so who knows? So now that I've talked for probably 10 minutes about how Crucible works as a transition, let's deal with the fact that it doesn't actually get to act as a transition novel. It has to be the end of this series. Not to get philosophical, but a transition is in many ways necessarily an ending. You have to end one thing to start another. So though I doubt that Crucible would look exactly the same, had Denning known when he was drafting that this was going to be the last novel featuring Luke, Han, and Leia, I think it functions fairly well as a capstone to this era in the EU. Not every plot thread has been neatly tied up or tucked away. Danger still looms out there, but we know the galaxy's in good hands. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye! Hello.